Essex, a helping hand with your land.
Neil from Essex here. We're out today to have a short conversation about sizing implements to your tractor. With skid loader couplers becoming very common on front loaders and category 1 3-point hitches on even the smallest of tractors, there's all kinds of implements that can fit on your machine, but even though they fit doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea to put them on there. So we're going to have a short conversation today about why you should not put an 84-inch skid loader bucket on your BX Series tractor. We are huge proponents of industry standards. If you haven't noticed, things like 3-point hitches have created a huge variety of implements in the tractor market because of their universal nature. We're starting to see the same thing happen here with skid loader couplers as well. This coupler has been used on skid loaders for years and years, and it's part of the reason why there's such a healthy industry for all kinds of attachments for construction equipment. And now we're starting to see the same thing happen with compact tractors also, where years ago you only ever really saw a loader bucket pinned on the front of somebody's tractor. A skid loader coupler is becoming an option that we have nearly 100% take rate on. Almost every person will opt to purchase this coupler because of the huge variety of stuff that we can find to put onto it. But that said, you know, when you have attachments made for skid loaders and small tractors using the same thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because it fits on this coupler, it's a good idea to put on your machine. So when we start talking in terms of lift capacity, you know, a skid loader like this can lift upwards of 3,000 pounds or more. And so really heavy duty attachments can fit on this machine and still work very well. You know, that 84-inch skid loader bucket that we just picked up weighs several hundred pounds in and of itself. The BX Series tractor, though, on the flip side, can lift in the neighborhood of about 500 to 600 pounds. And so when we take those implements and we put the implement onto the hitch, we really have to watch the weight of the implement itself. If the implement is too heavy, then all of that weight is being lifted when that loader goes up and down and not available to lift loads. So we always want to be watching that we're picking an implement that's scaled down to the size tractor that you have, right? Whether that be a BX Series tractor or an M Series tractor, the loader can only lift so much. And so we need to pick a duty of the implement, you know, whether it's a light duty, medium duty, heavy duty, whatever, to fit the tractor that the attachment is going on to. We also want to watch the width of the attachments as well. So typically when we're sizing, say, a loader bucket or a grapple for a tractor like this, we're sizing that piece so it just covers the width of the tires. And that's one area where I really don't always trust manufacturer spec sheets. There can be a lot of variation in the width of the tires from one machine to the next. So that's why we always carry with us our trusty tape measure to go out and actually pull a width across tires in order to see how wide the machine actually is. So typically this BX Series tractor is going to measure to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 44, 46 inches across the tires, and so we're generally going to equip it with about a 48-inch loader bucket. Let's say you wanted that loader bucket to go do snow, right? You could at that point really kind of justify a light material bucket, something that might be maybe 54 inches wide and a little bit higher capacity because you're manipulating those light materials. So application, we talk about application a lot here when we talk about tractors. Application is really important when we talk about our attachments because the materials that you're handling are really important in determining the material handling attachment that you're going to put onto your loader. In order to fully operate a lot of skid loader equipment, many of these tractors, including even the BX Series, are being offered with factory third function hydraulics. Third function hydraulics will add an extra set of couplers out here on your boom in order to plug an additional hydraulic function into a front implement. So years gone by, we always put hydraulics out the back of the tractors, but frankly anymore it's becoming almost more common to be putting hydraulics out the front. Those hydraulics are typically used more often than not for grapples, but we also will see a lot of guys wanting to run the full suite of skid steer implements on the front of a tractor. You know, it's a guy sees a skid loader coupler and a set of third function remotes and thinks, heck, I can do whatever I want with it, right? And I can tell you frequently, very frequently, we're getting asked to run, say, snow blowers out in the front of a loader because it's a very convenient place to put one. Applications like that are just typically not a good idea because none of these tractors are going to have enough hydraulic flow in order to properly run an implement with a spinning motor on it. So you really got to watch things like Harley rakes, snow blowers, brooms, those kinds of things. These small tractors don't have quite enough flow in order to pull off a skid steer implement. So even though you could pin it on and plug it in it's simply not going to work for you real well. The one exception to that can be post-hole augers. We can get some low flow post-hole augers that could do a really nice job on the front of a lot of these tractors. So that is a hydraulically driven implement that you can actually get away with. But for the most part, when we talk about third function remotes, unless they've got some really specific applications, for the most part, we're talking about grapples and things with cylinders that we're operating out on the loader. So we're standing out here in our rental lot today, and we can take a quick walk around here and look at some of the attachments that would work on a tractor and some that won't. So a hammer here, for instance, we could take this and put a skid loader plate on it and it will pin up to the front of the tractor. Not a good idea. The hydraulic post hole auger over here, this is a Macmillan 1975. Typically usually needs in the teens to high teens to low 20s for flow. An M62 can about manage that, but none of the other tractors are going to have enough flow to run this particular auger. And like I said, there are some low flow options for these that you can actually spin a small bit. My preference in a huge way over doing it with a 3-point hitch. 3-point post hole augers are a pain. So we keep on moving over here. We've got some front brooms, and we go back into talking about, that hydraulic motor again. So right over here, there's a hydraulic motor. In order to spin that broom, you really don't have enough flow and enough pressure to really run an implement like this properly. So thumbs down to doing it on a compact tractor. This is a really stout, heavy blade over here, but this is something that we do on compacts quite a lot. And in fact, Kubota even has some stuff in their own product line now in order to do this. So more and more, rather than putting belly implements underneath of a tractor, guys are choosing to put those implements out on their loaders because they're much easier to install. So Kubota actually offers now some small snow plows and stuff that can be hydraulically operated. So we can use those third function kits in order to operate those cylinders out on the snow blade in order to push our driveways. So that's really nice. Back here's a preparator. We got another implement here with a big hydraulic pump up here on the top to run it. This is a lawn prep piece that will go through and grind up the topsoil and stuff in order to make a nice smooth seed bed. Not going to work on a tractor. A grapple, though, is something that we sell quite a lot on a tractor anymore, more and more all the time. Now, this obviously is a really heavy construction piece, but there are some really lightweight grapples that Kubota and Lampride actually have themselves to fit on tractors starting at BX series machines and up. So becoming a hugely popular thing for brush cleanup, land clearing, and those kinds of things, to be able to take your tractor, drive into something, grab a load, and go haul away with it somewhere else. So really popular application. So you can see with the huge variety of implements that we got out here, there's a lot of things that could potentially pin to the tractor, but that's simply not going to run it properly. So on the back of the machine is another place that we size our implements, and we typically start here with a tape measure. If you take a tape measure across the back of your machine, measure across the width of your tires, you're going to come up with the distance, in this case here, right about 48 inches. So whenever we size an implement to a machine like this, we want to make sure that we're always covering at least 48 inches of width, because we want our working area here in the back to match the track of the tractor. So in the terms of, say, a rotary cutter or a brush hog, you'd use a 48-inch mowing implement behind the machine at the very least. Sometimes we can get away with a little bit bigger. If you sized a rear blade or a rear landscape rake, typically we're going to size those with the implement angled sideways so that we're covering the track of a tractor. So if you're 48 inches across here, generally you need about a 60-inch implement across the back so that when it's angled sideways, you're covering the track of the machine. So take snow clearing and those kinds of things. If you put a snow blower behind the tractor and you back up with the snow blower, the last thing that you want is for the snow blower to be more narrow than the tractor, because then you're driving over snow on the outside edges of the snow blower. So always have a good idea exactly what the width is across the back of your tractor. Know too that this is a place that I never trust manufacturer specifications. If you need to be down to, say, 2 or 3 inches or so, always pull a tape measure on a tractor. There's too much variation between tire options, and many machines, say in the M series, where we have 12 and 15 options for tires, and who knows how those rims are dished and those kinds of things. Checking with a tape measure is really the only way that you can be sure. Another thing that's back here on the 3-point hitch is 2 specifications. So there's a size of the pins based on here, the size of the hole. Most compact tractors under 50 horsepower are category 1. When you go over 50 horsepower, you'll see some machines move to category 2, and that's basically a bigger pin denoting more bulk and capacity in the 3-point hitch to handle a larger implement. When we get up into really large ag tractors, we've got category 3 and some other specifications too for heavy draft implements and stuff, but in compact tractors, typically category 1 and category 2. In some very small subcompacts, say the original BX series, there's a specification called limited category 1, and generally what that means is that those attachments can't lift very high up off the ground. So they typically would actually pin up to your tractor, but you're not going to get enough lift height. So if you have a limited category 1 hitch, you need to look for limited category 1 implements. You'll notice on all of your spec sheets, there's usually a specification for the lifting capacity of the 3-point hitch. In my experience, I've never seen a properly sized implement that a tractor could not lift. So our actual 3-point lift capacity, in my opinion, is pretty, not relevant most of the time. We're really needing to look more at the width of the tractor and making sure we have the right pins. And if you've done that part, more than likely the tractor's going to lift your implement just fine. When we do get into some of those really heavy implements, in my experience, seeders and those kinds of things, we can have a very, very heavy implement. We have to watch how much weight we have up on the front of the tractor. So say this machine right here, I've got a 48-inch used pre-seeder right now that would fit on the back of this machine that weighs 1,800 pounds, really big, heavy implement. But the tractor's going to lift it, manipulate it just fine because it's relatively close to the machine. What I would find if I pinned that implement up, that because I don't have a loader on my tractor right now, I've lifted so much weight off of my front tires that it's difficult to steer. So if you're starting to push near the limits of what your 3-point hitch can lift, also be thinking about the front of your machine as well. So in those applications, we would hang weights across the front weight block, or at least make sure we've got a loader installed on the tractor, or maybe even put some dirt or a load in the bucket in order to get enough weight in front of the machine in order to properly steer and ballast the load that we have behind us. So that's just a little bit about matching an implement to your tractor. In summary, we're big fans of the tape measure. We always want to go and measure across the machine and pick typically the smallest implement that we can fit that's going to cover the track of the tractor. If you keep that in mind, 9 out of 10 times you're going to pick the right implement for the machine, even by ignoring all the other specifications of your loader capacity or your hitch capacities. Just picking something that's the right width, most of the time you're going to get it right. So if you have any need for implements for your tractor, or we can help you buy a machine like this, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at messick's.com.